From Boomeo, you can learn Counter-Strike from a real in-game leader, a real leader of men, someone who actually you can respect in terms of holding his team accountable, making sure they do what they need to do, they practice the right way. Fallen from SK Gaming. There's many videos out there of him explaining stuff because NA lacks these leaders right now. NA is a fucking joke right now. Think about where they were 3 months, 6 months, 8 months ago. Team going to the major final. ESL1 Cologne, Team Liquid. You had Cloud9 rise up, have a fantastic run, win EPL. Admittedly, extenuating circumstances, but whatever, they won. You have Optic, yeah, again, interesting bracket draw, some upset wins, but they win a massive tournament. They're getting big placings. They're making it to the major. You have all these things going in their favor, but the necessary changes haven't been made since then. And all the NA teams are in a place right now where they're nothing. Optic loses all the time. They still don't have a leader in terms of the in-game leader, the tactician sorted out. Team Liquid looks great on paper. That's been the story of Team Liquid for the last 2 years, except for tournaments where Simple's taken them to top finishes. They always have the good pieces on paper and the name value's great, but until we see anything, we can't give them any kind of credits, can't give them any kind of plaudits. Cloud9 is probably the best NA team right now, but purely as a placeholder. And they're not going to be winning any big best of threes anytime soon, winning any EPL type title again anytime soon. In fact, with the current crop of elite level teams in Europe and the ones that are coming, they might never win a big tournament again with this lineup. So normally, when I break down teams, I keep it inside the server. I keep it inside the team concept of how you're going to balance out different roles and skills, because it's not up to me to decide how a player's going to play and how he should think about the game. I trust the player to do that. I'll leave him to do that because I'm not in his team. I don't hold him accountable in the same way. He's not responsible to me for what he does in that particular sense. So I look at what he gives me in the server, and that's who he is to me. I don't give a fuck if he was a legend, if he did some stuff 6 months ago, if he was really good 4 months ago when they had this different in-game leader. I don't give a shit. I only care about the guy in the server right now, what he's giving me, and that is what I will expect until he shows me more, because that's what I do from my position as an outsider. So when I break down the game, I look at teams, and I look at what I call the 3 pillars of Counter-Strike. I look at the skill level, the firepower we often call it. I look at the tactics they use. Well, how do they attune these to what tools they've got, how they can play, what type of opponent they're playing. I look at the team play element. How do people work with each other in smaller aspects? How does the overall whole work into what they're trying to accomplish and work off what they've got to use as a skill set in that particular sense? This time, though, I want to talk about an issue that I don't often bring up that much, which is actual leadership beyond these things I've just mentioned. So we're not talking about tactics. We're not talking about the in-game leader. I know the term makes it sound like it's leadership. I'm talking about leadership of men. People who come out and they take a role, because you don't just get given it. You take this role. You say, I want this responsibility. I'm going to take this burden, this yoke onto my shoulders. I'm going to be a leader. And I'm going to get all these guys around me, and I'm going to figure out how to lead these guys. And that doesn't mean I just tell them what to do. That means sometimes I talk to them. I try and get them on board with what I want to do. I try and lead by example. So when I'm demanding something of them, it's not something I don't demand of myself. This is the sort of person that NA lacks, and I don't see a single person like this in any NA team that's in the top 5 of NA. I don't see a single person who currently takes this role up for themselves. So they have tacticians. They have Sean Gares, they have Stanislaw. Get these guys with the X's and O's, and you get them on one of those graphics boards where they're moving around the pieces on an overview. They're dynamite. They'll come up with all sorts of great stuff. They'll figure out exactly what the team needs to do. But you know what? These are quiet guys. These aren't aggressive personalities. These aren't leaders of men. They're not that sort of a leader. They're the leader who hopes that you buy into what they're saying because they've come up with a very logical solution. And if you don't, then they just have to live with it, and that's just their personality. They let people run over them. They give people what they want. Now, then you got to look. You sometimes have the guys who have the skill and who take up the mantle and say, okay, I'll be the leader, but they want to lead by example. So Stewie goes out there. He plays better than most of his team, plays better than most of NA, he plays with a lot of competitive spirit, plays with a lot of drive. He wants to be really good. He keeps his level really good. He battles in the game. He does the thing he needs to do in the game. But he doesn't expect greatness of his teammates. He doesn't demand that they play a role that makes sense for them. He doesn't go to them and ensure that they know either they find something that works for them and they give it their all, which doesn't mean they have to succeed, just give it their all, or they're done. And he won't accept that of them. He doesn't ask the same of them that he does of himself. He just hopes that his example will see other people follow and do the same things. And if it doesn't happen, again, he's screwed, just like those guys who are the tacticians, but they aren't the leaders. So there aren't leaders of men in NA. Now, this is a CSGO problem and an esports problem in general anyway. I will say that much, because so many people in CSGO are done by the time they're 24. I mean, part of it's that the culture of people prizing skill over everything else means that if you don't have that skill in your 24, but you have all these other qualities, oftentimes people overlook that and they just want the 19-year-old kid who's more skilled than you right now. So there is a vicious cycle within the game, I will admit that much. But this is a problem because you usually need to be older than 24 to have had the time and the life lessons and the experience to develop those leadership skills on top of your in-game skill, which is what you're working on the first 2 to 3 years of being a pro mostly. Now, you notice if you see the truly great leaders in sports, most of them are like 28 to 34. They're the veterans. They're guys, sometimes in pro sports, who are way past their peak. They're not even that good anymore. They're just a role player, but they're there to bring the locker room together, to create a culture of how we play and what it means to be on this team and how a young guy's got to play, and go to that young star player who has way more talent than them and give him the benefit of their life lessons and how they conduct themselves and how they deal with issues and how they deal with when you're someone who's coming up but you're not quite the man yet, and the guy who is the man wants certain things of you that you don't want to, in terms of how you play the game. Overcoming all these little issues, they can give them the benefit of their life experience. We don't really have that in Counter-Strike beyond a few teams, maybe Virtus Pro. A few of these different teams out there that you can look at and see some of these players. I'd have said Na'Vi in the past when they had Zeus. There's a few guys out there who do fit the bill, but otherwise we barely have these people. And in NA, especially where their teams they're seen as a joke right now, they need these people, because these are the people more than anyone else who could turn the game around. Fuck AWPers and not having enough of them. Fuck not having enough entry fraggers that are dedicated and enough in-game leaders that learn this tactics. These are all great things. These would all improve things. But get some of these real leaders and men in there, and now we'll start to turn this scene around and get all that talent, and we'll actually demand greatness of this talent that they don't demand of themselves right now. So let's look at each of these teams. And I'm not going to break this down like I normally do, inside the maps that they play and the style that they play and their current performance level. I'm going to look at things I've heard from these people, things I've heard from people who know these people, conversations we've had before. I'm just going to be real on this shit. So let's start with Cloud9, the best NA team, but as a fucking placeholder. Okay, so everyone wants to praise Stewie2K. They want to say, oh, even though he's the best player in the team and he's the youngest player in the team, he's the least experienced player in the team, he's taken on that leadership mantle, like what a great job he's doing, and he does lead around himself well. Sure, said all these things myself. The problem is, though, if he wants to go further, I mean, he's even said he doesn't really want to be the in-game leader. I can see that, okay. He is a young guy. He's in the prime of his career. He's perhaps entering the next stage of his prime where he really becomes an even more dominant player. So maybe he just wants to focus on his own shit and put all his time into making himself great and work with other people, but not have to run the whole team. I can see that, sure. The problem is, at the moment, he hasn't got a single leader in his whole team. He is the only person with a vaguely leadership-driven approach because he demands greatness of himself. No one else in the team has that approach. Like, Automatic, to a degree, has an aspect of himself where he gets his level high and he's improved and he keeps his level high because he works on his own game. So in that sense, he does demand greatness of himself, but he isn't close to the type of personality who's going to demand it as something else. At least Stewie has that fire that we could perhaps channel into that. So if Stewie2K wants to think of himself as a leader, okay, yeah, he gets points for leading the team to some success. He gets points for figuring out how to play the team around himself. He gets points for just being someone who takes a leadership role up. Okay, sure. But at the moment, I look at this guy and I see someone who is confused, who's just seen a bad situation that was terrible, and he's thought, right, for the moment, I'll take over this. It's a temporary solution. I'll make the best of a bad situation. He's doing that, but again, it's temporary. Is he all in on being a leader? At the moment, no, but he's the only person in their lineup, unless they're going to make a player change, who can be that leader. So a leader in Cloud9 would do these things. My opinion, obviously. A leader would go to Shroud, and he wouldn't say what all the plebs think, like, do you care more about streaming than practice? That's ridiculous. That's not a question that ever even needs to be asked, because if there's any truth to that whatsoever, and there's any truth to Shroud, then people should already be able to figure that out who've been around him this long. No one's going to have to ask him, and therefore his answer is going to resolve that. No, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Shroud, and you're going to say to him, I think you've got talent, but right now, the roles you play and the way you play doesn't bring your talent out. It doesn't show in the server. And because it doesn't show in the server, you don't play your role well in our team, And you aren't good enough to be in this team right now with the composition of other players that we have. So you go to him, you say all of this, and you say to him, what I want you to do is this. I'll make you a deal. I want you, Shroud, to take responsibility for your role within the team. So you have to tell me, what role could you play? What position in the game could you play and perform at a higher level than you do right now? And the point is, if you can pick one out and you can do it, I'll give you that role. I'll give you that position. And therefore, you perform to that level, you're safe. I'll never cut you from this team. But if you don't do that, then we have to cut you right now. That's the responsibility that you have to be able to take. Everyone has to be able to perform ultimately. And so if he's not going to take direction, he's got to take it himself. He's got to take responsibility. You've got to ask that of him. And therefore, when he doesn't, you will realize that he is actually himself hindering the team. And therefore, you'll understand why you have to cut him even if you're friends with him. Because he himself won't take the next step to make you a better team. Now, then you got to go, a leader has got to go to Skadoodle and figure out, either with or without him, how to get this guy to be effective. Because more so than Shroud, we know the talent is there with Skadoodle. Because unlike Shroud, who showed it in brief little spurts and glimpses, but never with consistency, Skadoodle had consistency for years. He never dropped below a certain level. He always came to play in the big games. He always hit the big shots, but then it hasn't been there for the last 8 months. Now, he has started to bring it back together these last few months. I'll give him credit in that sense. But he's still not the dominant player that we need from a primary AWPer that we want to give every AWP we pick up and give the AWP every time we have the money to buy it. To be that player, he still needs to go to another level. So we got to go to Skadoodle. And by the way, he could have also done this when he was doing badly. That would be even more effective. You got to go to this guy and you got to say to him, or figure it out without him, if he's not someone who you can communicate with, you got to figure out what can we do to get him effective. Now that might mean, if you're going to be a leader, yeah, by the way, a lot of these leadership aspects are going to be a lot of fucking hard work for you. It's going to be a lot of extracurricular work. You're going to have to put more time and effort, and you're going to be tearing your hair out over some of these guys because you're doing what's necessary to make your team better. You're not just playing your hours in your contract, going to sleep and go, oh, well, I hope my team gets better tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Teams don't get better on hopes, dreams, and wishes. They get better by fucking hard work. So one thing a leader a Stewie 2K might have to do is if he talks to Skadoodle's someone who doesn't know how to get better, or doesn't know how to be more effective, and just plays a role, then you got to go to his past leaders. You got to go to Daze. You got to go to Sean Gers. You got to go to Adren. I bet a lot of you didn't know that, right? You got to go to these guys. You've got to ask them, how do you use Skadoodle? How do you communicate with Skadoodle to get him to change things up? How do you figure out if something's working for him? Even if he says it's all right and in the game he never complains, how do you do all these things so I can get a better sense of his psychology? That might also mean, in terms of communicating with him, spend a lot of personal time with him. Talk with him a lot outside the game, one-on-one. Try to get a sense from him of what actually does drive him. What actually happens to him when he's in situations that are bad, that aren't working out. And why doesn't he reach out? Or what would he want you to do in that situation? Or how could you help him to be better than he is at the moment right now? What blocks him from the superstar performance that we've seen in the past? How can he become a star again? Does he have any notions? Is he open to taking some advice? Is he willing to listen to old people who've been involved with him? If he's not going to do any of these things, now you know that the guy's not on board. Now you know he's not going to be someone who buys into your system, is willing to be great. Now again, you've got everything. All the boxes are checked or unchecked to tell you whether you have to cut the guy or not. It's not having to guess and hope that he gets back together and just leave him as this little black box that no one knows what's going on inside, but maybe it could suddenly fix itself and come together. No, you know what's going on and you know whether it's going to work. Because we know the talent's there, but it's irrelevant whether the talent's there if it doesn't manifest in the server. A leader has to go to nothing and has to find out, are you 100% all in? If you're 100% all in, and we accept that, is this role one that makes sense for you? Should you take a much, much worse role, but as a result, one that you could do, that you could be responsible for, and that could make Shroud or Skadoodle better? Could you do that? Could you give up some of that in that particular sense? Because at the moment, what you're doing isn't good enough. So could you do that? If you can't, probably have to cut you overnight. Probably have to instantly say goodbye. You're a legendary player. Guess what? Legends are around in every sport, but some of them are 50 years old and can't run a lick. Some of them can't throw a football or kick one or grab a basketball and dribble it. Doesn't matter that they're legends. I need a player right now who can produce. If you can't do that and then you can't take up another role and maybe use all your veteran experience, which is a good thing you have, then I got to cut you from the team. And I know that if you're all in, you'll do that. Because at this point in your career, you're not in a position to be on the best NA team and be the third best player. That's not going to work for you anymore. So if you want to be the third best player on an NA team, go join NRG. Go join CLG, have your big name, have your streaming, have all that cool stuff. But if you want to be on this team, the best, you got to be a guy who gives up his ego. You got to be like Neo and Taz over on Virtus Pro. You got to be like Markelov over on Flipside. You got to give it up so that these other younger guys can be stars, and then you can still have a place in the team, but you got to do something else to make those guys great because they're young. They don't know what it takes to be great beyond just killing people inside the server. So to me, Stewie is the only one who can do this right now in the current climate. He's the one who has all the power to help himself win right now. It's all great, well and good, him doing really well and the team doing like okay sometimes, everyone upset winning, and everyone says, don't blame Stewie 2K, he's a really good player. It's those fucking other ones, Shroud and Skadoodle, who just don't know how to play the game and nothing. Where's he been for a few months? No, because Stewie's the leader, remember. He's taken that role up. He's the guy who has all the power. He's the most important part in Cloud9, whether he knows it or not. And he can decide tomorrow whether he improves his chances to win or he chooses to remain in a bad, a flawed, a broken system that is not ultimately going to win and give him the success that his talent deserves. And individually, he's doing it all at the moment. You can't ask anything more of him individually, but if he's not willing to ask and demand greatness of others, he won't be in a great team. That's just a fact right now, and history has borne it out and will continue to. So now let's go and look at Optic. Because remember, Optic was looking like a great team. They were a team that were the rejects that came together and found a way to be great in the sum of their parts and became this fantastic team that even if they didn't always beat Europeans, they matched up well. They gave them a good account of themselves. They had a good map pool. They had a solid playing style. They had reliable pieces. Now you can say, yeah, it's not their fault Stanislaw left. Of course it is. Now, did they choose it? Could they have done... No, but here's the point. Could they have done something different? Yes. If they'd have really had a personal relationship with Stanislaw, if they'd have been communicating with him outside of just how we play Counter-Strike, if they'd have known him as a person, they'd have known what was going on in his head. They'd have known, is there things we can change? Can we fix things? Can we improve things to the extent where you don't need to leave? We've already got the pieces here. Can't we build from this onwards? They didn't do that. They couldn't do that. And he left. So assuming he isn't just some straight up sociopath who lied to all of them and put them in a fake personality for months and months, they didn't do these things. They didn't make those connections. And therefore, with no connections, when he got what he thought was a better offer and he saw problems in his team, he just left. He made it a business decision. They made it business with him. We're playing. This is how we play in the game. This is my job. You do your job. At the end of the day, okay, cool. We're all just pro athletes. And then they come out of that. And guess what? Like a pro athlete, he chooses something else. I'll go elsewhere, actually. I'm deciding I'm going to go to this team instead. These are issues in terms of how leaders wouldn't let that happen. Leaders would have the locker room together. They'd know what each guy needs. They'd know what he's thinking at the moment and what his problems are because they're taking his problems on board themselves and they're trying to address them as a whole with him and the other members of the team. They're trying to facilitate the greatness of everyone and therefore the greatness of the unit. That's what the leader is trying to do here. So in Optic, we look at this team. Who the fuck even is the leader now? I'll tell you, there isn't one. So Tarek, okay, here's the thing I'll give Tarek credit for. He has the fire to do it. He has some of the Stewie 2K fire, the drive to want to win and to voice his opinion and to not be afraid to do so. Problem is, he's not a cerebral enough guy. He doesn't have the emotional intelligence, the ability to read a person and know what they need and know who needs subtlety and who needs a harsher word to bring people together in that way. He doesn't have that. He has a good star player mentality of like the drive to win and do his job and I can do this and I'm confident. That's all good. He hasn't got the leadership mentality though. Then you look, okay, at Mixwell. Mixwell has all the talent in the world. He could be a leader by example and then try and get people on board. He's too chilled. He's too laid back. That's not his personality. He's not an aggressive guy in that way. Absolutely off limits as a potential leader. Naf, way too young, lacks experience, lacks eloquence. He's a guy who can't even figure out his own shit in game. So how's he going to tell someone else what to do? How's he going to, if he's fucking around a bit, how's he going to tell someone else to be more serious and dedicate themselves to get? He can't do that. So there's only one name left. And I think this is the case. I think at the moment, with the lineup they have, the leader of Optic has to be Rush. Because here's the thing about Rush. He has developed his game over the last 2 years. He's got himself to a point where he does what is necessary in his role, win or lose, to make this team function. And it doesn't matter if he has a good in-game leader or he has no in-game leader. He does his fucking job. And because he does that, because he demands greatness of himself, he is now entitled to demand greatness of others. And he is also, in my opinion, the most valuable, important piece in Optic right now. If I'm Optic and I can only keep one piece and build a dynasty from it, I'm picking Rush. And I'm building my whole team around him, and I can get other stars, I can get other supports, I can get another in-game leader, but this is the one piece where it's working really, really well in its own context. It works well in the context of others, and it's someone who has the mentality where they elevated themselves. They weren't just picked out and given some great shot elsewhere. He ground his way up with the same core, changing out pieces to the top. He didn't just get an invite to go and join Cloud9 or Team Liquid and then suddenly became really good, surrounded by good players. He made it happen for himself. So I love that mentality. That's who I'm starting with here. And the key secret that Rush has, okay, he doesn't have to do it all himself. You know, in sports, sometimes you have a great owner who wants to establish a culture of how we play and who we are as an org, and that's who I'm going to recruit, and that's who I'm going to choose to get rid of, even if they have talent. So if there's some amazingly talented Terrell Owens motherfucker, but they're a divisive element in the locker room who's breaking things up and fucking my team up, then I get rid of them for a worse player, but one who fits my culture. Because, again, it's about being more than the sum of your parts, not only the sum of your parts. So Rush has got this already. Hex at Optic is a guy who seems to fit this billing. He's a guy who has that mentality about how they should play. He's a guy who's worked with a lot of champions. He's worked with a lot of people who've been in slumps. He's worked with having to get new recruits. He's worked with veterans. If Rush works with this guy and he communicates the problem he has with this guy, the two of them together can make up a great leader. Where, yes, we'd rather it was one person with fantastic natural charisma and an amazing game that they could therefore demand other people. I'm playing fantastic. It'd be great if it was one person, but if it can't be, let's get two people. Let's make a gestalt. Let's have the two people. An amalgam of these two will be what will be the leader for us. Because it's time for someone like Rush to start thinking of this as his team. Not to think of it as a team that, oh, it's cool, Mixwell joined, he's doing really well. Oh, and Tarek's here now, and then my stuff. No, this is your team. Take up a leadership role. Make success for yourself. So you got to go to Mixwell, and you got to figure out how to get him doing what he does best. Because Mixwell has a little bit of the skadoodle in him where, oh, okay, I'll give up this role if you guys want. Or, oh, I don't know if I'm really that good at this aspect. You got to look at it and go, you are. You're the best in the team at this. This is the role that suits you the best. If you're a star, I can put myself in this position. I can put this guy here. And now we've got the basis of a team. We've got a fundament of something that's reliable. And then we can get the other guys. It's not about getting the guy who's the shittest, ill-suited to all his roles, and doesn't really play to a high level relative to his role and making him super comfortable. Let's make all the really good pieces fit first. Then we can figure out the parts that don't work. So for someone like Mixwell, you might have to go to him, talk to him, listen to him, but then you might also have to tell him, I need you to do this, mate. You can do this, you're the best at this in the team, and this is what I need of you. And just as in my role, this is what's great about someone like Rush. My role is shit. I run in there, get my head banged off by the best players in the world. So I'll do that. Therefore, you do this over here that's going to work for you and is therefore going to work for the team. Even if you feel like someone could be better at it and then maybe they'd prefer it, you're going to do this and we're going to have an agreement between each other that this is how it works. You got to go to Tarek. You got to figure out with Tarek, okay, you got all this talent. You got the drive to win. But what role fits your personality? What role actually can you do without complaining? What role can you do where it makes sense for you? There's a level of comfort, but you're also good enough to do it. You go and you work that out with him. Now you got your stars in place. You got to get someone like Nafly. And I'll just be straight up. I've heard stories behind the scenes. This guy's a guy who sometimes gets a bit cocky. Sometimes is talking out of school. I'd go and if I'm a leader, he's my first guy in the locker room I'm getting in check. I'm saying, listen, you've got talent. You're someone who one day might be the star of this team. You're someone at the moment, yeah, you're giving up some aspects to the others to be the stars. That's all great, but don't ever get ahead of yourself. You're not bigger than the team. This is a team thing, and we don't ever talk outside the group confines of this team about the team and about the other players in it and what we think about them. If we have friends elsewhere, be friends with them. Share your lives with them. But you don't let things leave the locker room that are problems, okay? Because that's a big issue, that's divisive, and that does come back to people through the community. And when the people hear these things, it might not be a huge deal depending on the personalities, but resentment builds. And this is another thing I'm keeping in check if I'm an Optic guy right now, if I'm the leader of Optic. So, Optic's play at the last few tourneys was fucking pathetic. So DreamHack Vegas, I am Katowice. Now you're going to say, but they didn't have an in-game leader. But they had Hiko and he's having his issues right now. Doesn't matter. They had 4 out of the 5 members who had all that success a few months ago, who looked so good. What? So overnight, not having Stanislaw to bring them new tactics meant they can't do any of the old tactics. They can't do anything they used to do. They can't do... No, this is nonsense. Now, if you look at the scores, they weren't pathetic. They had a number of close games. They had some odd games that they could have upset. This was all great shit. The problem is, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't you're not winning. You're not even coming close to winning in terms of actual results in the game. You're getting close in terms of rounds, but you're not winning the games. Misses as good as a mile in that sense. And on top of that, this tells me there's no confidence in the team. People don't have confidence in each other. People, I would speculate, don't accept responsibility. Like they think, oh, well, I mean, I did all right in that game. These guys aren't, or I don't have an in-game leader. This is bullshit. There's 4 of you here who was successful. You got to come together and say, okay, we might not be as good right now while we figure out this leadership issue, while we get someone else who we can bring up in that role, or we figure out some of the roles here. But this is a team. What do we stand for as Optic? What are our strengths as a team? Are we just going to give an excuse and go out last place and lose all the maps and go and just be fucking scrubs? Or are we actually going to demand more of ourselves and say, hey, we might not be healthy as it were, but we can still play and we can still give people a fight and we can still have some results. And guess what? That's how we'll get someone else to come to the team, and then we'll be a great team again, and we'll bash all these fucking teams that are beating us right now while we're a little bit weak and while we're not healthy. Where is the spirit of Optic? Where's their competitive drive? Was Stanislaw just the entire world to you guys? You don't want to believe that him leaving is the end of the team, but you've made that true. You've made that a self-fulfilling prophecy, where you make this guy look like he was the fucking puppet master, making all of you good at Counter-Strike. A bunch of these players are fantastic Counter-Strike players. They're some of the best in their region. I think Russia's one of the best in the world. But apparently, this guy stood behind them, telling them roughly what to do and giving them the prep work, etc. That's everything to them. If they don't want to believe that, if they have the drive to make it otherwise, then show us that that is the case. Now let's go and look at Team Liquid. So in Team Liquid, like I said, on paper, they have the pieces. Like, they have the in-game leader, Stanislaw. I don't think he's going to be a leader of men. But guess what? He has Zeus. He has Zeus as a coach, someone who's dealt with superstar personalities. If you think none of those SK guys are argumentative, or none of them qualify, I hate the term toxic, but what people would call that, people are argumentative or otherwise left to their own devices might berate people. You don't know shit about those teams that he was a part of. So this is someone who's dealt with these people, who's seen what it's like to have superstar players, seen what it's like to have role players that are unhappy or that are trying to fit into a team and that are playing poorly in terms of stats, but the team's winning, and he's juggled all these things. So if Stanislaw brings the tactical element and then he works with Zeus in terms of the leadership component, then we can bring the best out of these guys in a way that they haven't. Because like I say, over the last 2 years, Team Liquid has been the team on paper that always should have been the best NA team, but they so rarely ever got that out of their system onto the server and really showed that that was the case. So you go and look at Team Liquid right now, there's a whole bunch of problems, and some of them are skill-wise, some of them are role-wise, some of them are personality-wise. So let's go look at Nitro first of all. If there has ever been someone who got less talent out of himself in NA, please show me who the fuck they are. Because I don't know anyone who could say that. Because usually when someone, they think, oh, it's like Shroud, he's got all this talent, but he hasn't got it out of himself. That's the thing. At this point, I don't think Shroud has that much talent. I think he has some, and I think if he was used in very specific ways, maybe it would work a bit. But I will never have Shroud as my number 1 or number 2 player in my team and have focus around him. I would never do it. Because he has shown me that he's just not capable of that for whatever reasons. Now, Nitro is someone where that doesn't happen. He has flashes every month or so. Every 2 tournaments, there's these moments where it comes out. There were stretches 2 or 3 months towards the end of 2015 where it was legit, where he was showing what we're talking about, where he did have that star talent. He was verging on perhaps he can be an international star, but he's someone where he plays a role in wasting that talent. Now, if he wastes it, there's also another reason why that could be. First of all, he doesn't know how to apply himself. Secondly, is he disciplined enough? And thirdly, and this connects to the second one, is the focus there? So, okay, people might know that Nitro got married recently. Might know as a result he had a fiancée for a long time. They might know that as a result he's thinking about other things in Counter-Strike sometimes. That's all fine. You can balance your own life out and you can absolutely have a family life as well. But I am sick and fucking tired of this excuse that people give that when a player gets married or when a player has kids, that's an excuse for not playing well anymore. That's an excuse for not being the best you can be. That's an excuse for not dedicating yourself. Have you looked around the world? First of all, the sports world. Every player who's over about 25, obviously not everyone, but a lot of them in pro American sports has a wife, has kids, and they're still dedicating lots of time. They're still being great. They're still putting in all this effort because they have a career as well. Guess what? That career can help you provide for that wife and kid. You can use them as your new motivation. Now your motivation isn't just to be the best for you. It's to give them a great life. It's to battle every day so that they have a fantastic set of circumstances that you didn't have when you were in that position. That's a new way to make that motivation. If you just give it as an excuse, oh, but I got to spend time with them, or, oh, well, you know, I've got other things on my mind now, I can't play. Get the fuck out then. Either you're all in on both aspects, you're committed to both aspects, or you're picking one or the other. Because apparently that's the only way you can think. Then you got to pick one or the other. Now, I think it's not the case. I think you can balance these things. My point is bullshit, though. So for someone like Nitro, I can see his talent, but again, I don't give a shit about talent that doesn't show up in the server. So I'm going to this guy if I'm the leader of Team Liquid, and I'm telling him, don't ever fucking change roles again. We're going to figure out the role that you work in, and once we figured out that you work in this role, that is your job, and if you can play well enough, then you're a part of this team. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for taking the responsibility. If you can't, don't just tell me you'll take another role. Don't just switch things up. Don't give someone else other aspects and then let them do a worse job and then you play sort of all right in a different role. This is about winning at this point in time. And you've been in this team so long, you got to figure it out now or you got to go. Now, we can certainly give you a chance, but if you can't figure it out and you won't figure it out, then you got to go. Doesn't matter how much talent you might have in your little finger if it doesn't ever show up in the fucking game. So, Elige. Now, here's a great example, okay, because Elige has everything in-game. He's one of the best NA players that I've ever seen in Counter-Strike. He's someone who absolutely, in terms of individual level right now, is so consistent, gets his and more than you'd even expect, goes beyond the line of duty in that sense, plays at a high level even when his team plays poorly. This is all fantastic. But you know what Elige's problem is, and he knows this? He has been a bad teammate. He has been a divisive element. Now, sometimes that was actually by not actually ever saying anything to other people, by refusing to, by just letting other people lose the game, by just getting upset and angry and tilted at them, but refusing to have any confrontation, to ever address it, to ever make other people take responsibility for their poor play and their poor decisions and their stupid role that they've taken and refusing to do something. This is an area that he has to improve. Because as every young and really talented star in sports finds out, you can't do it alone. And you definitely can't do it by being really good yourself and letting everything else go to shit and just going, well, it wasn't my fault. I mean, I was pretty good in the team that lost. That's a loser's mentality. It doesn't seem like it, right? Because you're trying really hard yourself, but that's a loser's mentality. Because a winner finds a way to get the guy who is worse than him, who isn't performing as well, and try and work with him and try and figure out if he can do it. And if you can bring something out of that guy, and if you can communicate to him what drives you, what makes you great, and see if you can make that guy elevate his game, not to your level, but to a higher level. Because remember, if you're giving 95% of what's possible from your ability every game, then you can kill yourself trying to get that last 5%. It might never happen. Difference is, if this guy over here is at 30% efficiency and you can raise him 5%, now you might be winning games just off that. Now, as a team, you might look more cohesive, more dangerous. You might have an extra piece here, a tool that you can use in a certain way that at the moment you can't because you've got yourself and you can do what you can do, but everyone knows that and you're one-dimensional as a team as a result. So someone like Elige in the past has been willing, sure he was a younger guy, sure he was less experienced, sure he hadn't got to this level yet, was willing to let others fail around themselves. A leader has got to go to this guy and go, no, let's me and you work together, you're my best player, I'm the leader, we're going to make a deal that we're going to hold each other accountable, we're going to be responsible, and if you have issues, you're going to come to me and I'll deal with them, bro. You might not have the skills to do that. You might not have the personality for it, but I'll deal with it. I'll take that on board. You do your shit. I'll rely on you. You rely on me, and I'll get this done in the rest of the team. Now, in terms of JDM, all I'll say for JDM is just have some self-respect. I mean, this is a guy who is one of the best AWPers NA has ever seen in CSGO. Fantastically good. And yet, at times we didn't see him with AWPs. At times we saw him with AWPs and he was never in good position and nothing was working around himself. Now, he's a laid-back guy. And in CLG, it was a very laid-back team. And it was people who were friends and they've been friends for a long time. And they just knew how to work with each other. And they knew kind of, you know, which way their bread was buttered, who to set up, Tarek and JDM, etc. Okay, that was great. You're not going to get that by default in Team Liquid. This is a team with egos. This is a team where everyone in this team at one point in time has been a star player and thinks they still could or should be a star player. You got to go to them and you got to say to them, if you really believe you're a good AWPer, who can be a good AWPer, you got to say to them, I'm this team's AWPer. And because of the role the AWP plays in the game and the economy, if you give me the AWP, which I'm telling you to do right now, you got to also give me these other things. You got to set me up here. You got to give me my shots here. You got to give me the weapon on CT side sometimes when we're on like a low buy because I'm the one who'll get the kills. And you got to give me my positions I get the kills from. And you got to have someone who plays around me so when I get rushed that happens. And you got to give me the weapon when I don't have enough for a gun because my rifles aren't good enough right now. I'm working to get them better, but they're not. If you do that, then either you give you it all and you take responsibility and you don't perform to that level, or they will cut you. And at that point, you should be cut if you can't play at that level. So again, these things resolve themselves. There isn't this big mystery. Should I cut a player? Shouldn't I? Look at how he plays, play with him, give him a chance to get better, give him the things he wants, make him take responsibility, and then if he doesn't succeed after that, he should be cut. What else can you do at that point in time aside from sprinkle fucking fairy dust and pray that he becomes better? It's not going to happen, is it? So, in terms of those people, if you're a leader and a teammate of JDM's, help this guy out or get him the fuck out. That's it. That's the only options you have. And at the moment, you're doing neither. Now, Pimp, I will just leave because he doesn't play the roles that he would choose. He's not in a team that's culturally his. He can't be a leader because he's not in a good role, so he's going to play well himself and lead by example. He's not someone where culturally he understands the players. He is kind of the odd man out. We've got to just leave him out of this discussion in that sense. Now, a problem I see with Optic and with Liquid is when it comes to Tarek and JDM, because they had their problems in the past. Remember that CLG lineup they were a part of? I actually think that lineup underperformed. It looked like they overperformed if you knew the players and knew what they were capable of. They did overperform, actually. But they underperformed in as much as getting the most out of themselves. They had Tarek and they had JDM at their primes together in a team. But you know what? They couldn't reach Tarek. They couldn't get him to play the roles that made sense. They couldn't get him to play in an unselfish manner. They couldn't get him to play in a manner where either he plays unselfish and does a role, or he takes full responsibility for what happens, and he's the main star of the team. He was always in this middle ground between the two. JDM was a quiet star. He's lucky. He should be kissing the ground that they walk on, that people like Hazed and people like FNS and people like Kotler set him up to be a great player and gave him everything he needed. Because now he's in Team Liquid, he knows what it's like to have none of that, and to have people who have no intention of giving you that, and people who'd argue with you if you demanded it. He never had all those. So he thought he was a star player. In terms of performance, he was. But he didn't have the mentality. He didn't know how to make himself a star player in that particular sense. To give you an analogy, JDM is the basketball player who can't create his own shot. He's amazing, and he needs someone to give him the ball, to set him up, to get him open. Then he can dominate the game. That's who JDM is as a player. And at the moment, you're just passing him the ball, going, it's your turn, bro. You dribble up and take a shot. He can't do that. Now, a key aspect I want to get to here is leadership concepts for these teams, for leaders of men. Because here's the thing, as I've pointed out by some of these examples, leader doesn't mean in-game leader. You're not going to have to be the tactician to do this role, even though traditionally it has been the tactician. I mean, a great example of this for me is the leader of Cloud9 when they got those 3 second places in the summer of 2015. You're thinking it's Sean Gers, right? Definitely wasn't. The leader of Cloud9 was Freakazoid. Now, he doesn't even think he's the leader, but he was. Because what happened is, Sean Gers came up with the plan. Sean Gers came up with how we're going to practice, how we're going to prepare, how we're going to play. And if he'd have just been on his own with all those players and a different fifth player, Sean Gers would have never got any of that off the ground. He'd have occasionally had some of it penetrate their consciousness. He'd have gotten some of it working. The tactics would have half worked and had some upsets when people were playing well and they were feeling the system. But what happened is he had a guy called Freakazoid who essentially was the leader in as much as he enforced what Sean Gers wanted to do. So he was the one holding people accountable. He was the one who, because of his own role where he absolutely took responsibility for running through a fucking brick wall as the entry fragger and doing what Sean Gers said, he could then demand of other people, you do what he says as well. We all do what he says. This is how we all play. And you've got to be great. And you've got to play the right way. And you've got to play your role. And we've all got to practice. And we've all got to have a fire inside us that we can beat these European teams. And in doing so, in that sense, in terms of the emotional, the leader, in terms of the spirit of the team, Freakazoid was the leader of Cloud9. Because when you're talking about leadership concepts, we got to go and we got to talk to these players in our teams, and we got to find out what roles do they think they want, what roles do they think they're good at. Then we got to look at what roles they seem to be good at, what roles they actually can do, and we're going to see is there a match up. And if there isn't, if there's a disconnect and they're asking for the wrong roles, then we got to go and tell them that you can't have those roles. And here's why. And here's the roles that you can do. Can you do that? If you can't, probably have to get out. If you can, come into the system, take a part of it. I understand maybe you have to give something up or you don't want to get to play the way you want to, but this is going to be successful. This is how we're going to succeed in the game. Because if we can make it happen for you to have a role you want, then we're going to do it. But you know what? If we can make it happen for you, now we've given you focus. Now we've given you resources. We expect something in return. The price of that, the price of focus and resources and a role you want is responsibility. And when you get those things, the responsibility is that you play well and you play according to what that role demands. because you're not playing for yourself anymore. You're playing for us as a team, and we're putting you in a position where you can be successful so we can all be successful. Because when certain people get the things that they want where they can be successful, someone else gets something that isn't his first choice. It sometimes isn't even his second or third choice, but he's willing to do it to make you great because your greatness is going to help him succeed, and therefore is going to show his greatness in sacrificing in that particular way. There's a focus and a dividing up of resources, and this is what a leader has to help figure out. Because beyond that, another thing a leader has to do is we all have to get together as a team, and the leader has to set the terms that we're all going to make an agreement together on how we're going to conduct ourselves as professionals. How much we're going to practice, how we're going to practice, what sort of team we are, what our team identity is. And you know what that means? That means that you don't go and privately talk shit about another teammate with your other teammates behind the scenes on messengers or when you're alone in a room together without those guys there. You don't do that stuff. We resolve our problems as a team. We resolve them with the leader and he can go one-to-one to people, or we resolve them collectively, depending on what the problem is, with all of our teammates. And therefore, we keep making sure this team's on the right path. That means we don't let stuff get out the locker room. We don't go and have an issue and something that's bothering us a bit and go to another pro and a guy on another team and tell him what's going on in that sense and give them confidence that they're going to fucking beat us because we have these issues, and then let it get around the whole scene and back to your teammate who you didn't talk to and him find out someone's talking shit about me. So this guy over here doesn't like me, but he won't say it to my face. We don't let stuff like that happen where then emotional aspects get involved in what should be a job, what should be Counter-Strike, should be great play as a team together. And great teams don't have to like each other, but they have to work together and they have to be on the same page. So we don't let stuff get out the locker room. There's another thing a leader makes sure he sets out and then enforces. And if you betray the locker room, then get the fuck out. I don't care who you are. We need people that are unified, that are on the same page, that at least beyond personal things, when they're in the game, work together and they're fighting for the same goal. Also, we don't let people play half-hearted. Like when someone doesn't like their role or there's an issue with another teammate, we don't let them fuck around and play, I mean, I did my best, but then, you know, we were losing the game anyway, so who gives a shit and whatever. We don't allow that. We expect people to play to a certain level because that's who we are as a team. That's what a leader's got to be able to say. Because ultimately, all of these topics I'm talking about can be summarized in this sentence. A leader is trying to enforce this concept. Being a team, a real team, not just a 5 people on paper and 5 people who play in the server and 5 people if they all get headshots and go to these parts of the maps to win the game. A team, a cohesive unit, one thing. Being that is all about this principle. It's all about accountability of men to each other. And when men are accountable to each other and the standard is set high by the ones who lead the way, then everyone rises to that standard and men become more than they otherwise would be left to their own devices, and you accomplish something great. Now, that might not mean you win, but that might mean you take a team that had no chance of winning and you accomplish something great. You get close to winning. You beat teams that on paper are better than you, that have pieces that are better than your pieces, and you battle and you beat them. And that's what's great, because you accomplished something that shouldn't have been, that couldn't have been, but you got everything out yourself. And in that scenario, that's why the accountability is so important. It's about not letting the buck pass on from yourself or your teammates to others and say, well, I played well, and, you know, they'll have to figure that out, or I need a new teammate over here. No. You're going to make sure that if you need a new teammate, that's because you exhausted all your options. You held these people to that standard, and then they couldn't do it. And then you know, no qualms needed, no conscience betrayed at that point in time. This guy couldn't do it. He couldn't get up to our standards. Now we need to replace this guy. It's not about saying, oh, I'm good, that's your problem. No, it's your problem as well, bro. It's a team. You're going to win as a team, you're going to lose as a team. So if there's a problem in your team, you got a problem. And you better be worried about that problem. You better be looking for solutions to that problem. Because you fail together. There's no such thing as the team failed completely, but I was doing really awesome. It wasn't my fault. No, it was your fault as well. Maybe not to the same degree, but you got to share in that, because ultimately, same as if you're the worst player on a team that wins, you still get to be called a champion. If you're the best player on a team that loses, you still lost, right? Well, that still works in both ways. These all tie into the notion of greatness. It's about expecting more of yourself first, accomplishing that, and then that entitles you to expect more of others, because they will hinder you otherwise. You want them to help you from greatness, because you need greatness in terms of accomplishment as well to go with your individual greatness. So when you have these other people and you're entitled to ask greatness of them, you also got to help them. You got to help them find the greatness within them. You got to nurture that. You got to protect that. Sometimes you got to protect them from themselves and make sure they don't put themselves in a situation where you know their baser instincts or their typical habits are going to let them have an issue. You got to take them aside. You got to help them. You got to look after that guy. You got to make sure he's on target. You got to make sure he's fired up. You got to do all these things to make sure that you win together. Because remember, you're tied to him now. Your success is dictated to by what he can do to help you or hinder you. Now, the funny thing is, part of the reason why this is such an important topic to me is because these are the things I had to overcome in my own life as an individual. So, earlier times in my own life, I was someone who had a degree of talent, and I relied on that. And I staked my whole identity to that talent, and I thought to myself, I've already put in some work to develop my talent. I've already got it to a good level. It's better than most people. And so that's the only metric that should count, is how much talent you have, how good are you at what you actually do. And as a result, if other people are failing around me, well, fuck them, and not me. They're holding me back. If I get that guy away, get me help. Get me people who can actually support me and can help me because I'm doing my job. That's all great. Now, what I had to learn was, it's not about if I outperform other people. It's about, am I actually doing the best I can do? And sometimes that doesn't mean just individually. It means do the best I can do individually. And then also, if I need this guy to help me, can I help him? Can I work with him? Can I be a leader for him? Can I find a way to encourage, to nurture, to demand greatness of him so that then when he comes and gives it, now I rise with the tide, the rising tide. I can't remember the phrase, something, all ships rise with the rising tide. I don't know what the fuck that phrase is. This is the logic I had to figure out to help him help me. And so when I take responsibility for my own efforts and I hang my hat on doing everything I can't then just say, oh, I don't have to do everything I can with the others. I don't have to work with them. You know what? I could have done X, Y, and Z if this guy had helped me, or I was just unlucky to be stuck with this fella, or I tried and then whatever. No. In the same way, I'm not going to accept an outcome that's not acceptable to me. I'm not going to accept it from the other person. So win or lose, I'm going to keep working to get better. And I'm going to have to work to try and work with this guy, communicate with him and figure out what he needs and help him out and he'll help me out. And together we rise up in that particular sense. So I had to learn, how do you listen to people? How do you talk to people? How do you write? How do you communicate in other ways? How do you rewrite your own bad habits? Now, one of the great things, if you can learn to rewrite your own bad habits, is now you can go to those other guys and you can try and help them rewrite their bad habits. You understand what the issues are and you're not a hypocrite. You can set the example in that particular way. So leadership, it's a very complex topic. It takes years. It's an experience aspect, but part of it is a responsibility thing of accepting that responsibility and then demanding something of someone else and getting them on the same page with you. And you're not doing it like telling them their shit. You're telling them, I need you to work with me. And here's what I can do. And here's what you can do. And let's work together. And then if outside of that performance is good or bad, then it's up to people who are our bosses to decide who gets fired and who doesn't. Other than that, though, we got to have leaders who know how to get the best out of people. Because when you have a leader, you can get the best out of everyone. You can get everyone on the right page. When you have everyone separate, you're just hoping they all get on the right page. You're hoping they all head in the right direction. You're hoping everyone is super self-motivated. Most people aren't. It's going to develop everything, and it's going to pick the right role for them, and it's going to play the right way, and it's going to behave the right way. A leader can harmonize all that, and he can set the standard that you've all got to live to, or if you don't meet that standard, then you go elsewhere.